All right, hey guys. This is the week two video, obviously. Um, and so last week we learned a little bit about the Russian Revolution, and then we started reading Animal Farm. And I'm hoping that was like a little confusing because those two things don't seem to go together. Um, but hopefully this video will sort of like explain how and why they're connected, and that'll help you reading Animal Farm moving forward. So last week, if you remember, like that play pause it video, we learned about the Russian Revolution, which was when the communists took over Russia. So a quick recap: the person in charge of Russia before the communist revolution, before they took it over, was this guy Tsar Nicholas II. Tsar means like Caesar or king, so he was like kind of the king of Russia. And at the time in which he was ruling over Russia, in like the early 1900s, Russia had a huge problem, which was there was a small amount of rich people and they owned like almost all of the land and had access to all of the money. So there's a few rich people and sorry, there's a few rich people and then there was a vast majority of the population which was extremely poor. They were like peasants, they were workers who had almost no money, didn't own the land, were just barely scraping by. So, because of those economic conditions, communism became really popular in Russia. Communism, to put it really like simply, is a system of government in which the government is really big and really powerful, and the government makes sure that all people are equal. So, in a perfect communist society, a janitor and a doctor and a teacher and a business owner should all be making the same amount of money, and they should all have the same amount of like access to food and all that stuff. In a communist society, everyone is equal. Um, and of course, it takes a strong government to like ensure that that happens. And Lenin was a very prominent communist. And when Tsar Nicholas II was overthrown, when they removed him from office, Lenin took over all of Russia. Like I said, he was a communist. He believed that everyone should have the same amount of power and money and all that stuff. He died pretty shortly after he became the leader of Russia, and there was a power struggle between these two people, Stalin and this other guy, Trotsky. They were communists as well, and they both kind of wanted to be the head guy. So Animal Farm seems like it's a little different than the Russian Revolution. It's about a farm. It's about a farm with talking animals. And a little recap of Animal Farm so far in chapter one. Old Major, a pig, gathered all of the animals on the farm. And he said that it is not fair that the animals do all the work, but the humans get all of the reward. He said that everyone on four legs, like animals, are friends, and everyone on two legs, like people, like humans, are enemies. And then Old Major went on to describe a dream where all of the animals like rise up together and live in freedom and equality. So how are these connected? Well, Animal Farm is a specific type of story called an allegory. Okay. And an allegory is a story where all of the characters and events represent or symbolize something else. So basically, Animal Farm isn't just a story of like a random farm with talking animals. The farm and the animals represent real people, and sometimes like an animal will represent like a group of people, not just a singular individual. So you guessed it, this story is an allegory for the Russian Revolution. What I mean by that is all of the characters and all of the events in Animal Farm represent real life things that happened in history in Russia. So essentially, the author of Animal Farm, George Orwell, decided to tell the story of the Russian Revolution and communism, but tell the story not just through the historical people, but retell it as like if it was a farm and if the people were animals. So as you read, you should be thinking about who the characters might represent. Um, Sorry, I lost my train of thought. So you should be thinking like who the characters and who the events represent. So my first question, and this is obvious, hopefully, is if sorry, is that if Animal Farm is an allegory or a symbol of the Russian Revolution, then where or what does the farm represent? Now you're going to have a question on your own. Okay, yes, the farm represents Russia, obviously. So if the whole story, if the all of Animal Farm is representing the Russian Revolution, then the farm or where it takes place is supposed to symbolize all of Russia. All right, now this is a slightly harder question. I'm going to think about the backstory. Lenin takes over for Tsar Nicholas II. Lenin is this revolutionary who has this grand idea and takes over the country. And then in chapter 1, we learned about Old Major, the pig that gathers all the animals on the farm and basically outlines this idea of, hey, what if we all just worked together and took over the farm as a collective and shared all the resources? So my question is, and this is somewhat obvious, hopefully, who would Old Major represent? Yes, he represents Lenin, obviously. And my follow-up question is, um, what do Lenin and Old Major, so Lenin, the guy that takes over, who has this grand idea, and Old Major have in common? Like, how can you see that Old Major represents Lenin? Okay, hopefully you got it right. And that's basically all I have. My intent is that as you're reading this, you are trying to like connect the dots between who these characters are in real life. So like we read about, you learned a little bit about Stalin and Trotsky, the people that kind of took over or the people that tried to take over for Lenin, and Stalin was the one that ended up taking over. But you'll get to that. Like, be thinking about who these characters might represent. So as we read, we'll be reading Animal Farm, and then occasionally we'll be reading like nonfiction historical stuff, so that way you can connect the dots even further. All right, that's all I have. Thanks, guys. By the way, you're probably going to want to comment, oh, I'm bald now. That's fine. You can do that. I won't be mad at you.